Good afternoon and welcome to the City Club of Cleveland. My name is Paul Harris and I am president of the City Club's Board of Directors. I am pleased to introduce today's speaker, Dr. James Zogby, founder and president of the Arab American Institute. As stated at its website, the Institute, quote, is a nonprofit organization committed to the civic and political empowerment of Americans of Arab descent, close quote. As further stated, the Institute has two primary focus areas: campaigns and elections, and policy formulation and research. Dr. Zogby was born in Utica, New York, the son of immigrants from Lebanon. He graduated from Lemoyne College in Syracuse, New York, with a bachelor's degree in economics and earned his doctorate in comparative religions from Temple University. He subsequently studied at Princeton University as a National Endowment for the Humanities postdoctoral fellow. From 1971 to 1978, Dr. Zogby taught comparative religion, religion and philosophy, and religion and social change at Temple University, Dickinson College, Rosemont College, King's College, and Shippensburg University. He also served as a visiting professor at Davidson College. In addition to his studies at Princeton, Dr. Zogby has received research and writing grants from the National Endowment for the Humanities, the National Defense Education Act, and the Mellon Foundation. The Mellon Foundation grant enabled Dr. Zogby to teach Islamic studies to faculty at a consortium of colleges in Pennsylvania, which in turn enabled the faculty to enhance their overall religious curriculum. In the late 1970s, Dr. Zogby co-founded the Palestine Human Rights Campaign, for whom he also served as chairman, and he subsequently co-founded and served as the executive director of the American Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee. In the early 1980s, he co-founded Save Lebanon, Inc., a nonprofit organization which funded health care for Palestinian and Lebanese victims of war, as well as other social welfare projects in Lebanon. In 1985, Dr. Zogby founded the Arab American Institute. In 1993, following the signing of the Israeli-Palestinian Peace Accord in Washington, then Vice President Gore asked Dr. Zogby to lead Builders for Peace, a private sector committee to promote U.S. business investment in the West Bank and Gaza. In that leadership role, he, among other activities, led a U.S. delegation to the signing of the Israeli-Palestinian agreement in Cairo. Dr. Zogby has been active in U.S. politics and has held a number of positions for the Democratic Party. He's a frequent guest on television and radio programs and hosts Viewpoint, an award-winning weekly call-in program on Abu Dhabi television. Since 1992, he has written a weekly column on U.S. politics for the major newspapers of the Arab world. His books include What Ethnic Americans Really Think, What Arabs Think, Values, Beliefs, and Concerns, and, most recently, Arab Voices. Dr. Zogby has testified before U.S. House and Senate committees, serves on the National Advisory Board of the American Civil Liberties Union, and is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. He has received numerous honorary degrees, no surprise there, and in 1997 was named by his undergraduate alma mater as the school's outstanding alumnus. I will tell you there's a lot more, but I'm going to stop there so he can speak. I am very pleased to present, on behalf of the City Club of Cleveland, James Zogby, founder and president of the Arab American Institute.
You know, the fun part of getting the Distinguished Alum Award from my alma mater was that I'd been suspended in my senior year for a couple of weeks and had to beg to get back into school. Always fun to sort of come full circle that way. Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you for being here. I'm here to talk about a book that actually was a labor of love. I've written others before that have not been labors of love. This one was one, and I should say, to be quite honest, there was a time when it went from being the book to the damn book, but that was mostly due to problems of editing and work with the publisher to get things the way they wanted it to be done. It was an opportunity to tell some stories, an opportunity to say some things that I've wanted to say for a long time, some of which I've said in previous appearances before the City Club here in Cleveland. And so getting a chance to put it all together was something that was meaningful to me, and I actually don't tire talking about it. So thank you for coming, and I hope not to wear your patience thin with too much talk about this labor of love. The book is about the stakes, about how problematic our relationship with the Arab world is, and about why that relationship is as problematic as it is. I look at it this way. Since the end of Vietnam, if you take just the Arab world alone, we've spent more money, we've sent more weapons, we've sent more troops, we've fought more battles, we've lost more lives. We have more critical economic and political interests at stake in the Middle East than anywhere else in the world. Every U.S. president since then has had his presidency defined in large measure by his success or failure in the Middle East, from Carter's problem with Iran all the way up to the current president, who is trying to get us out of Iraq, at the same time dealing with a Middle East peace process that is in a state of collapse and turmoil in Lebanon and the broader region. It is an issue of enormous concern, and the stakes are really high. And yet with all of that diplomatic investment, with all of the economic investment, with all of the political and human investment that we've made, we don't understand the region, and we don't listen to its people. And I argue that in large measure, it is because we don't listen that we're having the problems that we're having. Simply because we have engaged a region with critical interests, with enormous investment, and we've done so blindly. When the Texas Board of Education, late last fall, voted to sort of strip out gains that had been made in improving their educational system by adding more about Islam and more about Arab history and culture, they voted to strip it out. They were reinforcing the fact that we don't listen and don't want to listen. When again, late last summer, we had a national furor created over building an Islamic cultural center 11 blocks away from Ground Zero, creating the sense that there was a collective guilt among all Muslims, that all of them were responsible and therefore none of them should be allowed near that site to pray. We were again sending a message, we don't listen, because it wasn't so much just the insult it created here, the sense of alienation it created here, but what it said abroad about who we are and how we feel about a part of the world where we are that deeply invested is something we pay no attention to. Being tone deaf, not hearing what you sound like, is almost as bad sometimes as not hearing what others are saying to you. When this administration, despite the fact that I have supported it, and you've noted I'm a Democrat and a proud Democrat and continue to be a supporter of this president, but the tone deafness of this administration as they've handled the Arab-Israeli peace talks is just stunning. There's been a meandering process that's gone on. They raised expectations coming off the Bush administration. This president went to Cairo and made promises. This president said no more settlements. This Secretary of State said not one stone, and declared that when settlements were being built in Jerusalem, it was an insult not only to the vice president who was there on the ground when it was announced, but to the entire United States of America, and then turned their back on that. The tone deafness, the inability to hear what people are saying, or to hear how people hear you, and therefore what they expect from the things you say to them. When we don't pay attention to the needs of young people in the region, except belatedly when the Secretary Clinton has now begun to speak about civil society in the region, as Tunisia is in turmoil, and Algeria is in turmoil, and Egypt is itself being roiled. And when, in Lebanon, we have pursued a policy that ignores the deep divisions that have fractured that society right down the middle, continuing a policy of the last administration which ignored the fact that Lebanon is not one polity, and you cannot play victor vanquished with a society that fragile, with a society that on the brink. And all of it comes, therefore, from not listening, from not paying attention to what people are saying, what their needs are, and what they expect from us. The problem is a deep one, and it doesn't just begin today, and doesn't just begin with this or the last administration. It is a part almost of who we are. We have not paid attention to the world. I mean, I often used to say that America is just not suited to be an empire. We live within two oceans. We're surrounded by oceans. We're separated from the rest of the world. I mean, yes, you can see Russia from Alaska, I know. But the rest of the world has always been kind of like going to the zoo to us. It's always been exotic characters that, oh, look at the French guy, and we see the world in caricatures and stereotypes. Because we don't have direct interaction. We're not France, who lives surrounded by other neighbors who are of different cultures and languages. We created a dominant culture here that for generations denied the validity of those visiting cultures and ethnicities that came to create the America that we are. We're changing to some degree, but still not yet at the point where we see the validity of quote-unquote being foreign or different. Our educational system didn't help. I went to school. I'm of the age of I'd get the cheaper rate here. And I went to school in the social studies book. I'll never forget. We used to call it Stone Age Man to Ike, because it began in Europe with the Stone Age Man. Now, Stone Age Man is not Europe, but there were Stone Age men in Europe. But the only one got mentioned in the book was the one in France, in Europe, because it was basically a Eurocentric book. And it went Stone Age man, and then it was the Greeks and the Romans, and then it was the Dark Ages, and then it went from the Dark Ages to the Renaissance, and then it went to modern Europe, and then America, the fulfillment of it all. China factored in two places. One was Marco Polo. Had to be a white guy who discovered them. It wasn't that, in fact, what the real story is that it was the Mongols who were the great conveyor of civilization across Asia that brought civilization to us. But no, we had to see it as one of our guys who went to them and found it and brought it back. Hey, look what I found. Those weird people over there are doing this, doing that, and we ought to get their spices and their silks and so on. And the same with Columbus, who found America, even though it wasn't lost. But that was how it factored into our story. It was a European story looking out at the exotics. China, when it was in the book, Marco Polo was one. The other was the Great Wall, partly because it was so big that there had to be a picture of it. I mean, if you can see something from a satellite, you ought to somehow mention it. The Arabs were in 2 paragraphs, and it was usually a picture of a guy on a camel next to a pyramid. Probably was product placement because Camel cigarettes were on the market, back then, and kids wouldn't know what they were buying if they didn't, oh, I've seen that one in my book, It's the camel and the pyramids. And it was a section about Bedouin and about desert life. There was no mention of Arab civilization as a contributor to the West, as the conveyor of civilization between the demise of Greece and Rome and the rise of Europe. Where did knowledge go? Where did advances go? That wasn't part of the story. And so basically our knowledge base was so low because we didn't learn. And it wasn't just my generation. We were the ones who became the teachers of the next generation, who taught the next generation. And studies that were done in the 70s, 80s, and 90s established very clearly that what our kids don't know would in fact fill books. And it was in large measure because our teachers didn't know to teach. One study done by the Chicago Council on Global Affairs after 9/11 found that the kids were asking all the right questions. They wanted to know. But the teachers were not equipped to answer the questions. And not only that, but the teachers didn't know where to look. And the books and the material weren't available. My institute, working with the Department of Justice Community Relations Division and also with the NEA and the American Federation of Teachers, were asked to produce materials to distribute to schools because they simply weren't available about Arab civilization, about Arab Americans, about the contributions that Arabs made to world history. People were asking the questions after 9/11, but the answers weren't there. And it's not just there. 2,400 American colleges and universities, 4-year programs. Only about 300 have Arabic studies at all, even offer Arabic courses. And of them, only 2,400 kids in college are studying Arabic at a level where they can gain proficiency of the language. Less than 1% of American high school students study Arabic as a language. More kids study ancient Greek in college than study Arabic. Now, nothing against ancient Greek. Some of the finest people I know actually lived next door to a family back. It is an important language. It's part of our cultural heritage in the West. But it is a critical area of the world that needs to be understood, and we don't understand it. And as a result of that, what happens is we don't know. Knowledge is low. But if it were left at that, it wouldn't be so bad. But the popular culture and the media culture and the political culture impose upon that absence of knowledge then stereotypes, which define the Arabs for too many of us. So that we have the Arab that we know is the Arab that we see on television, or the Arab that we see in the movies, or the Arab that comes through in political culture, or in the media culture. And so the what I try to do is to look at the myths and the stereotypes that come through. You know, the idea that Arabs are all angry and they hate us. I mean, that was 80% in the last poll we did. 80% of Americans said that Arabs don't like America because they hate our values. Actually, the opposite is true. About 80% of Arabs like our values. The reason they don't like us, if they don't like us, is not because of our values. Those are the things they like. What they don't like is the way we treat them, is our policies toward them. And they had specifically identify Palestine and Iraq and torture, etc., as the policies that actually create. Now, it's logical. People don't judge you by what you say about yourself. They actually judge you by how you treat them. I mean, if you come home to Honey every night and either slap her around or are busy cheating and doing whatever you're doing, but keep saying, I love you and I'm really a great husband, the truth ultimately is judged against the behavior. And the behavior just doesn't wash. And they see it, and they feel it. And so the myth that Arabs are angry because they hate our values is just not the case. And the polling shows it not to be the case. But it still, in America, exists as one of the dominant myths. I mean, actually, Americans think that most Arabs, I characterize it this way, go to bed at night hating America, wake up in the morning hating Israel, and spend the rest of the day either in a mosque getting their hatred fueled or watching Al Jazeera television where they watch the news that makes them even angrier. The reality is, when we poll Arabs on what are their most important concerns or what are their most important, the things that they want most out of life, and we give them a whole range of topics to choose from, number one is jobs. And number two is education. And number three is healthcare. Sound familiar? I mean, they're actually people like us. They go to bed at night worried about their jobs. They wake up in the morning thinking about their kids. They spend the day thinking about healthcare and will they have enough money set aside when they get old to take care of their parents, et cetera, et cetera. They are people like the rest of us, and that comes through in everything we do, in everything that we know about this mysterious people that are angry. And when we ask them what they watch on television when they get home from work and we sort of grade the television programs throughout the day and through the evening, they watch movies, and they watch soap operas, and they watch game shows. They watch a show that was a spin-off of Regis, exactly the same guy wore the same tie and shirt combination. I had to be careful about that. I made fun of it in one of my speeches, and the guy sitting right smack in front of me had the thing on. And the most popular show for 3 years in a row during Ramadan was a show called Frasier. It's based on Golden Girls, and it's a cartoon. It looks like The Simpsons, but it's actually like Golden Girls, and it's 4 old grandmothers living in the old part of Dubai, which you really have to look hard to find. And what they are doing is sort of lamenting the life that they had that is no longer as they're dealing with modernity. The kid who started the show was a student in Boston, fell in love with the TV show Golden Girls, and said, that reminds me of my grandmother. And so made a show about it. It quickly became the most popular show during Ramadan. That's not angry people hating America. That's kids and people very much like us who, when they turn on television, want to be entertained. Because we have these myths that they're all angry, or that they're all the same, or that they're so different that you can't even talk about them as a people, or that they're backward and they don't want change, or all of the myths that I talk about in the book that I've written, we've made fundamental mistakes in how we've approached the region. We've talked at people, not to them and with them. We've not understood what they've wanted, and we have therefore made decisions that have only compounded problems and not made them easier to solve. Biggest, the most devastating foreign policy blunder of the last century will be Iraq. It did not. People have asked me, well, they have a democracy now, wasn't it worth it? And the answer is no. When more than 100,000 people, innocent civilians, have died, it is never worth it. We lost 3,000. Would we ever say for any reason whatsoever that 9/11 was worth it? We just lost 6 people in Tucson and 13 injured. And yes, there is an opportunity now for us to engage in a more civil debate, and hopefully people are going to take to heart the need to engage in civil debate. Not that the lack of civil debate was what caused it, but in the silence that emerged after that killing, we became aware of maybe the sound of the voices of our better angels, and we said, maybe we shouldn't be yelling at each other and we should just pay attention to life. And yes, that's a good thing, but would we ever say it was worth it? No, we never would, because the loss is always greater. It always trumps whatever gain emerges. And no one, despite the president's soaring rhetoric, the parents of that little girl who died will always look into the void and say, it was not worth it. Nothing is worth it. And when I think of the Iraqi mothers and fathers who are exactly like us, who lost children during sanctions, who lost children because of Saddam, who lost children because of our invasion, who lost children because of the aftermath of our invasion, who 20% of the population is either internally displaced or refugees, cannot go back to their homes. Is it ever worth it? And what it did was, in the end, it empowered and emboldened Iran. It unleashed a sectarian war. Saddam was evil, but life since Saddam has not gotten better for most Iraqis. And I know, because I've talked to them. And we've polled them repeatedly. I did a poll that was actually a stunning example of not listening. We did a poll in Iraq, the first one right after the war. It was in October. And we found some disturbing things. 55% felt that they'd been abused by the military. Most thought it was an occupation, not liberation. Most wanted American troops out, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. A couple of days later, I turn on television. Dick Cheney's on, Meet the Press. And a very reputable poll, Zogby. Perked up. Maybe I like this guy. He said, very reputable poll done, Zogby. And you know what it said? It said they love us. They want to be just like us. They want us to stay. They want us to finish the job. I wrote an article based on that, published in one of the papers, a number of places, but the one that I loved was the one in The Guardian. They gave it the title, Bend It Like Cheney. And what I argued was that it's one thing to fudge intelligence going into a war. It's another thing when you're there and you've got 100,000 young men and women in harm's way, and you get somebody who tells you, this is what they're saying, this is what they feel, and you ignore that. Then all you're doing is destining yourself to more heartache down the road. And so we went for years simply not listening and creating a hole that was deeper and deeper and deeper. And I could go on with the problems that have been created by not listening, by not paying attention to what they're saying. The point, though, is that I think that there's a new mood afoot. And while I have some criticisms for the president, and I do, and I believe that there have been opportunities that have been wasted, and some policies that have been embraced that should have been rejected. Nevertheless, I go back to Cairo, second anniversary of which we'll celebrate in 6 months, and I remember that speech because it was a roadmap for change. He understood the problems and sent a message that we will forever have available to us as a measure for how far we've come and whether we've gone anywhere at all. It's one thing to be oblivious to the problem. He at least acknowledged the problem, the depth of the problem, and the way forward. And some changes have been occurring. For example, when Mrs. Clinton was at the Forum for the Future and announcing again new programs and what USAID was doing. I mean, I grew up in when I was doing the work with Vice President Gore, our AID programs were, I used to call them, like the equivalent of the little boy who walks the old lady across the street even though she didn't want to go. It would be, we'd have $75 million for the for the Palestinians, and it'd go to the bowels of the agency, and some guy who, like, sort of wore, garters on his sleeve and a visor would say, well, we'll do this, we'll do this, we'll do this. Nobody ever talked to the Palestinians to see what they wanted. Nobody ever talked to the Jordanians or the Egyptians to see what they wanted. We got the money. We appropriated the money. We sent out RFPs, requests for proposals. American companies responded to them, and then we went and did them, whether they wanted them or not. I was at the Casablanca summit that I chaired the economic panel on with Vice President Gore, and we had 3 Palestinian ministers on the panel. And they were talking about the Palestinian economy and its needs. And afterwards, some young guy, about 31 years old, comes up to me and says, can I meet the ministers? And I said, yeah, sure. Who are you? He said, I'm the guy that just got the $9.3 million contract to teach Palestinians how to be entrepreneurs. And I said, really? That's interesting, because Palestinians don't need to be taught to be entrepreneurs. I mean, it's like you give them 2 nickels and they start a business. You give them 3 and they buy your business. This is not a culture that needs to be taught entrepreneurialism. I mean, here in Cleveland, I mean, you got them everywhere, right? I mean, that's what I was joking when I first started selling the book at different places. I'd say, I'm going to shatter some myths, but there's one that I'm not going to shatter. My dad was a Lebanese immigrant. He owned a grocery store. He sold things. I got a book. And you're not getting out till you buy it. And I was, I'd go from there. But no, I mean, and so I went over to the Palestinian ministers. I said, this guy just got the $9.3 million contract and the minister of the economy said, he was furious. He said, no one told us that. No one ever talked to us about what we wanted. And and we thought $75 million we'd get to design the program, or at least work with them. No way. Didn't happen that way. We built a housing project in Gaza, big billboard out front, gift of the American people to the people of Gaza. Average unit was to sell for $164,000. They finally brought it down to $94,000 in a part of the world where the per capita income was $600 a person. What the hell were we doing? What were we thinking? Who were we talking to? The answer is we weren't thinking, and we weren't talking to anybody. We were designing programs without thinking. That has completely changed. When Hillary Clinton 2 years ago went to the first Forum for the Future and announced the programs, every single one was a partnership. Every single one. Partnership on entrepreneurialism, partnership on youth development, partnership on women empowerment, partnership on civil society development, etc. Every single one sought out an Arab partner, worked with an Arab partner to promote common goals. A significant development that makes a huge amount of progress. And to their credit, in the last couple of years of the Bush administration, the MEPI program, which every year brings thousands and thousands of young people to this country for an education and for an experience of a lifetime that is transformative. We all saw that picture of Bill Clinton, when he went to the White House and shook hands with the president. That stuff, those early year development programs are the things that ultimately shape lives and give kids a sense of new horizons. The fact that we have now selected across the Arab world thousands of young people to participate in these programs is great. And there are other people, not just government programs, that are getting it right, but increasingly I'm seeing American corporate responsibility on display in the Middle East. The worse it got from the politics in Washington, the better American corporations got in their behavior. They became our best public diplomats in the Arab world because businessmen are interested in doing business. And if the government was making the environment sour, businessmen were doing what they could to improve the situation. And so we have to recognize the fact that American companies were day in, day out, not only teaching better business practices, and actually, you open a McDonald's in a part of the world that is not used to the kind of regimentation and the kind of structure of the way to do work as a McDonald's. That's a lesson that people actually need to learn, and it works. People don't go to Starbucks in Kuwait or go to McDonald's in Saudi Arabia or go to Pizza Hut in Egypt because the food's better. They go because they want a little piece of America, because actually our culture and way of life are a commodity that people want. Our businessmen know it and are doing a great job promoting it. And I also have to hand it to some colleges and universities that are doing great stuff in both fostering education development and promoting the kind of values among our kids that encourage an openness. Not enough yet. And government also can do more. That hated government can do more. Back when Eisenhower started National Defense Education Act, when that program got expanded after Sputnik and we started talking about what do we have to do to be competitive in the world, we need to do that again. We need a National Defense Education Act that creates tens of thousands of scholarships in Arabic language study, in Middle East culture programs. Our kids ought to have the option to learn what they currently do not know. And we ought to be able to provide it to them. And there is a bill currently being proposed by Senator Kerry, which does just that. And that is the guy has vision and foresight, and he understands the need to do it. So there are positive things happening. And people are beginning to talk and make a difference. And think, and make a difference. And people are listening more than they have before. But we're not there yet. And I worry that the partisan divide is such that we're racing against the clock. Some folks trying to make it get better, and some folks trying to make it worse. If Peter King has his way with these hearings on Islamic radical, he'll cause more radicalization among young people than he will solve the problem. And we have to understand that the message it sends is a negative one. And so we all have a responsibility as citizens to listen, to be open to listening, and to help make change, because the stakes are very high. The consequences of not listening are great. We can learn, we can do better, there are opportunities to do it, and that's what I'm here to talk to you about, is what can we do? What can we do, each of us in our own way? Organizations like yours provide tremendous fora. All across the country, as I've been going to city clubs and Commonwealth clubs and Council on Foreign Relations and foreign policy associations, I meet engaged citizens who say, I want to make it better. You can do it. You can do it educating yourself. You can do it by challenging your congresspeople. I mean, I think that you've got to let them know these are issues that matter. Yeah, I'm concerned about foreclosures, and I'm concerned about unemployment, and I want the job market to grow. But I also know that American lives are being lost. And I also know that American interests are at risk. And I also know that the foreign policy blunders of successive administrations have put our country at risk in a part of the world where we should not be at risk, because people want to like us. We just have to do better. And it all begins, I think, with communities that are engaged around the country. And so that's why I'm so pleased to be here and talk to you today. And I hope in the question and answer period we can maybe unearth some other issues that you want to talk about. Thank you very much.
sit down there a little bit. Today at the City Club of Cleveland, we are listening to a Friday forum featuring Dr. James Zogby, author of Arab Voices, What They Are Saying to Us and Why It Matters, and founder and president of the Arab American Institute. We'll return to him in a moment for our traditional City Club questions. Start formulating your questions now, and we'd ask that they be short and to the point, and if they aren't, you may hear from some members in the audience. Today is the City Club's annual International Forum on Cleveland and the World, made possible by a generous endowment gift from Paul and Sonia Unger. Joining us at the table today, the head table today, are Sonia Unger, Paul Unger's widow, and Gerald Unger, Mr. Unger's son. Would you please stand or wave your hand to be recognized? Thank you very much for your support. We are also pleased to welcome guests at a table hosted today by the George Group. Thank you also for joining us today. We would like to recognize and thank Continental Airlines, the official airline of the City Club of Cleveland, for providing travel arrangements for our speaker today. We are also pleased to host students at our forum who are here as part of our City Club student program. Participation of these students is made possible by a generous grant from the Fred E. Shaw Foundation, Bernard L. Carr, chairman. With us today are students from Chagrin Falls High School. Will the students please stand and be recognized? Thank you for joining us. Now we would like to return to our speaker for our traditional City Club question and answer period. We welcome questions from everyone, including guests. Holding the microphones today are City Club Development Associate Lucille Barbati and City Club Program Director Carrie Miller. First question, please.
Yes. Dr. Zogby, you have an unusually difficult assignment, which you've taken on with enthusiasm, and that is to explain the part of the world that you know well to at least our country, if not the rest of the world. But your task is compounded by the very deep confusion, perhaps ignorance is the best word, about not only what it means to be Arab, but what it means to be Muslim. And I would ask you to talk about how confusion about those two terms compounds the learning task for a country like ours, and what you think is the very best way for our country to hope to learn more about those two categories of human beings, and how we might hope to see you and us together make progress on that task.
Did I mention I have a book? Oh, I did, I think. That's actually why I wrote it. It deals with those issues. It deals with what is an Arab and who is an Arab, and what constitutes that people. And then using polling data, and I love polling, not just because my brother's in the business, but because when you poll 4,000 people in 6, 8 countries, how many we do, you're actually doing something really quite extraordinary. You're hearing 4,000 voices speak to you, and you get to organize it by gender and by age or by country or by education level, and you respect every single voice. When we ask questions, what's the best thing you say about your country, or what's the first thing that comes to mind when you think of America, and you get these open-ended, responses. I mean, you can actually hear, it's like having a big throng of people outside your house. You open the window, and you hear all these voices, and you get to organize them and respect every single one and try to make sense of what they're saying to you. So I am pushing a book, and I am pushing it because it provides some of those very answers. And then it has a section in the back that talks about what people can do in their communities. And one of the things you can do, you have a very vibrant community here in Cleveland, a vibrant Arab American community, a vibrant Muslim community, and they are here as a resource that you can learn from and take advantage of, rather than see people as alien and foreign to our country, to recognize instead that we are better and richer because we've got these communities in our midst from whom we can learn about the world that they come from and respect because they present and bring to us something. One of the things I love to do is I get into cabs in Washington, and first question, I like to ask the guys where they're from, where their families are, and are they safe? And every single one of them is a hero. I mean, to me, because they all remind me of my dad. They're guys who, had an education in Nigeria or in Ethiopia or in Somalia, and they come here. And they're driving cabs during the day and working a job at night, and their wife is out working, and they got 3 kids who are in school, and the first thing they want to tell you about is how their daughter just got a great grade on her thing and she's going to college next year. I mean, they are here because they love America and they want to take advantage of the opportunity to be free that we provide, and yet, how many kids from the Hill get in those cabs every single day and treat these guys like they're the scum of the earth and talk to them as an object? And they'll tell me that. They'll tell me about the resentment they have over that. And yet, there's a learning experience in every cab. There's a part of the world that can open up to you in every single cab. I learned more about Somalia and the conflict there, and more about the Eritrean, Ethiopian conflict, more about North-South Sudan than I ever could have learned in a book simply from talking to cab drivers every day. And you've got the same opportunity here. So that's my point, is that the opportunities to learn are everywhere around us, and the internet. I taught 1 year at Davidson College. It was the only time I taught actually in the age of the internet. And it was a visiting professorship in public policy. I had 13 incredibly bright seniors in a seminar. What a job. That was the only thing I had to do every week was this one seminar. And somebody told me one time that the 2 professions, surgeons and college professors, are the 2 jobs where the better you get at it, the less you do. Right? I mean, nobody ever said to a baseball player, "You're so good, we're only going to play you once a week." And yeah, that's right, boss. I only want to play once a week. And I don't want to play every day. I mean, college professors. I mean, it was great. They offered me this job, come down for a semester, teach 1 course. I said, "That's great, I'll do it." But it was an incredible group of kids. And what I did with them was, I had them each pick a country and go online and read daily newspapers. Every single Arab country has a paper in English. And in many cases, they're the best paper in the country. Beirut Daily Star is without equal as a newspaper. The Jordan Times is wonderful. The National or Gulf News are great. Arab News in Saudi Arabia. They open the world. And I used to tell the kids, don't read the front page only. Don't read about the headline. Do what you do when you look at an American paper. If you read an American newspaper, you ought to. Go to the local news. Go to the obituaries. Go to the page that has local crimes or the civic or the personal announcements, because you learn about the flavor of life. And you become invested in a people. I still hear from these kids. It was 5-6 years ago that I was there. I still hear from them because they have fallen in love with the countries that they embraced for those couple of months that I taught them. And they have now gone, some of them have gone and visited, and they want to know more about those places. So the opportunities to learn are there. It's simply a question of getting out and doing them. Very long answer to a short question, but thank you for it. And oh, there's a book that... Yeah.
Dr. Zogby, this may be in your book, but I'm going to say it anyway. As a returning Peace Corps volunteer for a year now, I've been back, I would highly suggest someone of your stature, along with my own individual attempt, get the Peace Corps to go into the Arab countries, because that PR is tremendous in both respects.
They are in some Arab countries, but not in all, and I don't know the reason why. But I know that they're, I know that they're in some of the Arab countries. I don't know all of them, though. You're right. That is, I mean, some of the most amazing people I've met in my generation are folks were in the Peace Corps in that first wave, and came back transformed people from the experience. That's what I'm saying, though, about the Arab kids who come here. The problem is, you're right, we don't have the programs going the other way. I mean, there are, 12, 14,000 Saudi kids studying in America, but we don't have American kids going over there or going anywhere in the Arab world at all, and frankly, there are places you can go and there are places you can learn amazing things, but we just don't do it. Peace Corps is one way, and there are others as well. Yes.
Hi, I'm a junior at Brown University, international relations, studying Arabic, actually. And I just got back from a semester abroad at the American University in Cairo. So I guess I'm one of those.
Yay. One of those 2,400. Yay.
So my question...
The new campus.
The new campus, yeah. I lived in Zamalek, though. Yeah. So my question really has to do with the fact that you talk about, in America, how it is very difficult to get an actual view of the Arab world, and that's actually why I went to Cairo. But I felt in my classes that there's just as much ignorance of the United States. Yeah. And, even though I was in mixed classes with Egyptians and Americans, the Egyptians really were not so open to listening to kind of, how we view our position in America, as well as, clearly I was surrounded by a bunch of conspiracy theories, such as the Mossad shark in Sharm el-Sheikh. Yeah. So it's that kind of thing. I feel like there's so much misconceptions about the United States and the West in Egypt. So, does any of you reach to
That's actually my next book. And no, I'm serious. I'm very serious because we've been working on that. When I first started going around on this book tour that started a couple months ago, one of the first questions I always get is, what are the myths they have about us? And so I started thinking about it a lot, and I wrote a column about it. I write this column every week in the Arab world, and what I'm trying to do here with this book is what I try to do with my column and what I do when I go to the region to lecture, and that is deal with the myths that they have about us. I remember after the 2004 election, I was in Bahrain and I was speaking at the university, and they said, Bush won re-election. We were willing to give America a bye on his policies until they re-elected him. Does that mean now that all America embraces and endorses everything he does? And I said, no, that's not why he won. In fact, those issues that trouble you most were not even on the agenda. And when I have these students that come over in the MEPI program, one of the things that they learn the most about is they're here, and I visit them all at the end of their tenure. They come by, and I have a round table with them. And the one thing that strikes them is the complete absence of the issues that mean most to them on television. They are consumed with Palestine or with Egypt or with Syria or with Lebanon or Iraq, and they're watching some 12-year-old girl who is missing, who plays out every day for 3 months or something like that. The Hollowell story, remember that one, the 19-year-old down in the islands, and they were like, that's important, but there's a war going on and thousands of people are dying, and there's no discussion about it. So you're absolutely right. They have incredible myths about us, and that need to be understood and dealt with. And I think we don't do a good job of ourselves of telling our story. One of the things I say, though, that for risk of sounding totally irreverent here, one of the myths they have about us in the Arab world is that they think we're really smart. And that is one of the reasons for conspiracy theories. They cannot believe that we are stupid and that we make really dumb mistakes. So no. They went into Iraq in order to, and then they come in, and they wanted Iran to become powerful so that it would sell more weapons to the whatever, and that would make America more permanent presence, and they wanted to destroy the country and create this, and no. They didn't know what the hell they're doing. No. They read, and they come up with this thing that actually makes perfect sense to them, because if you start with the assumption that America's really smart, then all the dumb things they do have to have a reason. Well, They don't. So anyway, and oh, incidentally, the Israelis are equally smart. And so everything that happens, they also knew what they were doing when they did it. And they're the only ones. One of the, you know, anyway, so you're absolutely right. A lot of myths. I try to deal with them. But I think one of the problems we have about not listening is that we don't know what's on their mind. I write in the book about my conversations with the public diplomacy czars from Charlotte Beers, the first one, up to Karen Hughes in the Bush administration. And I tell them, you're selling a product, but you don't know the market you're selling the product to. So the ads that you're doing and the messages you're crafting are not answering the questions they're asking. And if we understood what they thought about us and what their myths were about us, we'd do a better job of selling ourselves. But where am I now? Yes.
Hamid Yusuf, Syrian-American, migrated here at age 16. To my friend in the back of the room, I'm an American by choice. Yeah. So every Arab American has a very unique ambassador status, yeah. And I'd like us to promote it. But speaking of the word ambassador, why is it every Arab ambassador or Arab country ambassador, with the exception of Iraq, has an American last name, not an Arab last name? Mm. I'd like you to encourage that in your studies.
Yeah, well, there have been a couple over the years, but and there will be another one coming up soon that is important, you know. But look, and I'll be blunt with you. Some of the ones that we got, even the career foreign service ones, it was a war. It was a war to get them through. This is not. This administration has been gun shy on a lot of stuff. There's no critical appointments in any of the areas in policy making among people of Arab descent. It's not that there's not people to get; they just haven't appointed them. And and to get through Senate confirmation is a rough road to hoe. And so there are issues here that have to be worked on. There are issues that have to be worked on, and but there are a couple coming up. There are a couple coming up, career guys. There's one who's been stalled, and I don't know why. They just won't appoint him. But it is frustrating for the Arab Americans in the Foreign Service that they are not used more effectively, given the role that they can play, and the power that they bring to the position, because it is so respectful. I could tell you lots of stories, but I won't. Next, yeah?
It's Dr. Zogby.
Are you from Chagrin Falls?
Yes, I am. I'm a
Do you
senior.
get chagrin jokes? Do you? I'm sorry. I was hoping that somebody from your school would ask a question, because it intrigued me. Okay, sorry.
It's rare, but I went to Egypt with my Arabic teacher, Ustad Fadia.
Yeah?
My question, though, is do you believe that the separation of North and South Sudan is an opportunity for the U.S. and Arab nations to work together to foster peace in the region and to increase our feelings to both the U.S. and Arab nations, an opportunity to stabilize that region?
Well, it's going to be a heavy lift on all sides. And the heaviest lifting is going to have to be done by the Sudanese themselves. There are lots of issues that have to be worked through, and I think it's obvious that they could not work out the settlement until they had the divorce. And I'm assuming now that the vote is going to go in the direction of a divorce, but they have between now and June, when this comprehensive peace accord comes to an end, to negotiate issues that are not just the issues of borders and oil resources and sharing of wealth and water, critical water issues, but they have to deal with citizenship and nationality issues. About 700,000 southern Sudanese. We had so little understanding. I mean, a lot of the people who were the advocates on Sudan had never been to Sudan, and they were using it as a sort of a wedge issue against Arabs to make a fuss here in America. You know, they were actually, it's a big, long story, but the point is that they didn't have a clue. Why, if it's the North hated the South so badly, why did 800 and something thousand Southern Sudanese, why are they still living in the North, in Khartoum? You know, why did a couple million actually cross into the North and live there seeking refuge during the Civil War? I mean, it was a problem on both sides. There were problems, and I'm not absolving the government in the North, but I will say that one of the things that has intrigued me no end, and if you look on my website, my aaiusa.org, my weekly television show, we just put it up there. Yesterday I had the Andrew Natsios, who had been special envoy to Sudan. We had a 20-minute discussion on the Sudanese election and the outcome. But one of the things that's most intriguing to me about it is the fact that the U.S. is being so vocal in its praise of General Bashir in an effort to recognize the role he's played in helping bring these elections to fruition. So yes, it will be difficult, but I think that there's goodwill, at least on the part of the United States right now and the northern government, but a lot of issues have to get solved. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Today at the City Club of Cleveland, we've been listening to Dr. James Zogby, author of Arab Voices, What They Are Saying and Why It Matters, and founder and president of the Arab American Institute. Thank you, Dr. Zogby. Thank you very much. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This forum is now adjourned.
For information on upcoming speakers or for podcasts of the City Club, go to cityclub.org.